Okay, so before we go any further, I'm just going to fix something that I broke in the last couple of videos. If we come here to our attribute VOP, our noise, let's come to the one for our hairs here, just as an example. Now, if we go inside, I've actually set the anti-alias noise here to be a one-dimensional noise when it should have been 3D. So if you set this to one-dimensional, you actually have the same noise value for the X, Y, and Z. So back here at the top, if I just increase our frequency a little bit, let's bring the offset speed up a bit so it's a bit faster. If I press play, you can see that our noise seems to be all sort of working in one direction here. And that's typically a sign that you've used one-dimensional noise. So let's go in there and fix this. Typically with sort of vector attributes like position, you want to use 3D noise. So now with that changed, you can see hopefully that this noise looks far more organic. We've got different values for X, Y, and Z, and it kind of feels a lot more natural. So I don't know how I missed that, but I apologize. But at least now we know how we can use one-dimensional noise or three-dimensional noise for our setups. I'm going to change our time back to time divided by 5 for our offset. I might just bring up our amplitude while we're here now, looking at this. And probably will leave the frequency about 6.5. But I think this is quite nice. It's giving a nice sort of feel of air flowing through these hairs. So I think that is what we'll do for this one. Okay, let's go up and fix the others. So we also had this VOP here under our branches. So let's go in again there, just change that to be 3D noise. And we also had this on our plant A, so we'll go back into that. And right at the top here, under our first resample, let's just dive in and let's just change this to be 3D as well. Okay, so with that all fixed up, let's move on now. So this is the setup we've got at the moment for our grass. And what I want to do is have each of these branches kind of unfold from a little ball at the bottom and just unroll to their full length. So let's do this now. Let's come up to the top here to our original branches. We're going to take the line we're feeding into this, and we can just put down a bend deformer or a bend sop to bend this into shape. So let's type bend, put down our bend sop, and making sure we've got our handle selected. You can see if we select and view through our bend, we can now bend this. So if we were to tap B, we can flip through the axis that we are bending around. If you flip this a few times, you'll get to the axis you want. You can also press M to flip the direction. Just going to set this back to default. Let's actually just bend this all the way around to start with, probably somewhere around 280. And we can also press G to toggle our capture handle. And this will allow us to define essentially where our capture origin starts. So we can drag through this and we can almost unroll our little curve here. So let's just pull this down a little bit. I'm going to rotate this a little bit just to sort of bend this inwards. And what this will do by rotating is it kind of spirals this into more of this kind of shape. I'll move this back a little bit. I'm going to rotate maybe a little bit more. I think something like that is going to work. Something around this. So let's keyframe this. To start with, I am going to just keyframe our bend. So we'll go back to our first frame. I'm going to keyframe this by pressing Alt and clicking on this one. Let's go to maybe around frame 105 or so, and let's unfold this all the way around, maybe to about -28. I click a keyframe here, Then come to about frame 145 and just set that to be 0. Just come to our attribute editor, tap H, zoom out a little bit. I'm just going to extend these handles a bit just to give a little bit more easing to our animation here. Okay, cool. So we've got that so far. Might just come in and just move this keyframe across a little bit more. Good enough. So let's come back to our handle here. I'm going to right click over the center here where this little box is. I'm just going to change our align handle to be world, so we can now move this in world position space. And I'm going to keyframe this as well. So let's come back to our first frame and just keyframe all the X, Y, and Z. And then we're going to unroll this, and this is going to basically unroll our spline. And at the same time, we're also animating the bend. So this is going to be kind of like a double effect going on here. So let's go all the way to 150 and just drag this out to the end of our curve here. And just put down another keyframe. I'm going to play through that. So now we've got both of these sort of working in tandem. So it just cuts it off a little bit towards the end. Going back up now to our copy to points, we can see that this is being applied through all of these. But one thing I want to do is kind of offset the timing of our animation. They're all happening at exactly the same time. Now, because we are feeding just this single animation into our copy to points, we can't really change that here. But we can use a for loop to adjust this. So let's just move this over a little bit. Let's put down a for each point. If we feed in our original points to the start of this for each begin, click on the end, we've actually got the method here set to fetch piece or point, and the end is set to merge each iteration. You can see by this number here, this is actually causing us to have 3 loops of this for loop. And the reason for that is we have 3 points in our input geometry here. So it's basically going to split apart our geometry into each individual point and process that separately. So by doing this, we could actually copy to points within this loop, and each time we could offset the animation for each point, essentially. And we can use our loop number to drive an offset for that animation offset, if that makes sense. So let's try this and I'll show you hopefully what we mean. Let's drag out a copy of this copy to points with Alt drag. We're going to leave that connected, but we're going to connect our second input to the output of our for each begin. And we're going to drag the output of this to our for each end. So this is just going to run through the loop 3 times and process our points individually, and the result is actually the same. If we come here to single pass, we can actually scrub through our individual loops here, and you can see 0, 1, and 2 is our 3 different branches. Loops start at 0 just to be aware of, so for 3 points we're going to have 0, 1, and 2. So currently we've not actually changed anything here in our setup. It still moves exactly the same as before. However, we could put down now a time shift node. So the time shift will just let us shift our animation to any frame. By default, the expression here is just to use the current frame. But we can now offset this using the loop number of our point. So let's just make a little bit more space still because it's a bit of a setup here. I'm going to select our for each begin and just create meta import node. This is just sort of like a utility node that's going to give us information about the state of our for loops. So with it selected, we've got a couple of detail attributes: iteration, number of iterations, value, and I value. If we come to our spreadsheet for this, and we make sure we're in detail mode, you can see we have these here. So iteration is actually the loop number we're currently in. So for the first point, it's going to be iteration 0. For the second point, it's going to be iteration 1. And for the third point, it's going to be iteration 2. So we can use this to essentially offset our time shift here. So let's do this by, we're going to do plus detail. So we're going to grab the detail attribute and we're going to grab it from this node here. Now you could type this node in by opening brackets, and I think if you do ... /... you can essentially put in the full path to this. I always find this annoying and confusing, so the better way to do this is actually just to come here and just add a spare input. This means we can just drag this node into this, and we can now refer to it in this expression here by just typing -1. If you were to create more spare inputs, you could refer to them by -2, -3, etc. It's just a nice, easy way to quickly drag in a node and refer to this easily. So we're going to grab the detail attribute from our for each begin metadata 1. We're going to grab our iteration attribute. So we're going to put that in quotes. And lastly, we just put 0 here and close out our brackets. So this might not look like it's changed at all, but what we've actually done at the moment is we have added a value of 0 to the first point, a value of 1 to the second point, and a value of 2 to the third point. So it's essentially just evaluating which loop we're running through. But if we actually multiply this by, say, 15, we're now going to be shifting our time shift by 15 frames for each point in sequence. So let's come to our end here now. Let's scrub through, and you can see we've now got a nice offset along our curves. So this one comes out first, then this one, I believe, and then the middle one. So now we've randomized this a little bit more. So let's just connect up the output of this to our noise P. We no longer need our old copy to points. This has now replaced this. And in our next video, we are going to come down and finish off this setup.